Hello everyone, my name is Shugo and I'm the 74 EC for the Japanese side. In this session, we'll be hosting interviews to JASC 73 delegates starting from today. Today we have Niko Olson, who's also from my RT, in the same RT as I was in JASC 73 and also a good friend of mine. So please, can you start by introducing yourself, tell us which RT you were in, and also why you decided to take part in JASC 73.
Yeah, sure. My name is Niko Olson, and I was in the Natural Disasters and Crisis Management RT. I decided to join or participate in JASC. I heard about it through a friend of mine who attended University of Virginia. He learned about it through his Japanese class, and then he told me about it, and I was immediately interested. I've always been interested in the culture, and the idea of a conference between students for bilateral harmony is just really cool to me, and I thought I'd give it a try. So here I am.
Thank you. Obviously, we're both in natural disasters. We were both in natural disasters RT. But what is one of your best memories of JASC that you could think of?
Well, I'd say one of my favorite memories was near the end of the conference. So it was a hybrid. So the American delegation was together in Hawaii and the Japanese delegation was connecting remotely from Japan. And we had a bit of a JASC talent show, or if you could call it that, and it was really cool to see people share their talents and skills that weren't necessarily business or JASC related. So some people were singing or dancing and playing the piano, and we had some jokes and some cool, quirky talents. It was really cool to see people pairing together. Like there were duos and trios between some, like spanning the different delegations. So some Japadelis and Amadelis doing something together, and it was really cool to see, and it was also just a lot of fun. So that's probably one of my favorite memories I can think of.
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, you went to Hawaii last year, and for the American side and for Japanese side, we went to Aomori, and some of them online. But do you have any other good memories that you've experienced when you were in Hawaii? Did you go somewhere, or what kind of experience did you have in Hawaii in person?
Sure. Well, Hawaii was a blast. It would be difficult to just pick one. I want to say one of my favorite trips was we went to this beach on the north side of the island. I think it was the north, called Waimea Valley. I apologize for butchering that name, but it was this beautiful beach, and we got to see this sort of outdoor like botanical museum before we went to the beach, and the beach itself was beautiful, and we got to see seals and sea turtles and a bunch of sea creatures, and just in general explore that part of Hawaii. It was really cool. I definitely recommend going to Hawaii if you get the chance. So that's probably one of my favorite days from the trip.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we're just talking about like fun activities and leisures that you could experience when you're at JASC. But let's move on to the discussion part of JASC, which is very important. And my question to you is, give me one discussion from JASC 73 that you still remember to this day.
Sure. So obviously, you and I were in the same RT, and a big natural disaster, well, not a natural disaster, but a crisis, in the process of being managed was COVID. And so even in the beginning, before we actually started the main conference, when we were doing RT meetings leading up to it, we were talking a lot about the sort of authoritarian versus democratic schools of thought or approaches to managing COVID, whether we should do lockdowns or emphasize personal accountability and education. And it was a very compelling debate, and I know that we definitely spanned all over the spectrum of very serious and nitty-gritty to, joking and fun. So it was a great debate that honestly lasted pretty much all of our JASC career, I would say. And it culminated in the end. We did for our final RT presentation, we actually did like a mock debate that reflected and sort of echoed a lot of the conversations we were having leading up to the conference. So it was great, and it brought us somewhere too. So that's probably one of the most compelling conversations we had.
Thank you. So you're obviously talking about like really compelling, interesting debates or discussions you had during JASC, but did you experience any sort of like conflict of opinions during JASC, and how did you kind of got over that conflict to kind of achieve something during the discussion or the debate?
Sure. Well, obviously, being an American and talking to a bunch of people who grew up in Japan, there's going to be some conflicts of opinion or of belief. And so there were certain times where we would talk about politics, especially like in the Pacific or in history, especially with the world wars and things like that. And oftentimes disagreements would come up. But I would say that what I'm very happy about and very proud of is that no animosity came from them. It was disagreements of perspective and not of, I wouldn't say, like there was no venom, there's no malice. It was very much misunderstandings or disagreements. And what was so great about JASC is that it honed our communication skills and the ability to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. So for example, we were talking about like I learned that in Japan they did sort of these peace education sessions in schools, and I disagreed with somebody about some detail regarding that, and instead of going into argument or debate, or rather animosity, we cleared it up and we both learned from it, right? Because obviously I come from my perspective, he comes from his, and we both came out with a fresh perspective. So I would say I think conflict is part of learning. So
thank you very much. And I think that was really, really interesting. But you were talking about how there was no animosity, and there was obviously conflict of opinion, but you went through that. But related to that question, what was the most challenging aspect about JASC as a whole?
Sure. I would say definitely just making everything fit into the schedule. It was a very busy 3 weeks, a lot going on. Be it guest speakers or panels, debates, RT meetings, going out on location, free time as well. Just so much going on, and we had deadlines to meet, and we had assignments to do, and sometimes it could be difficult to make it all happen and not be a little stressed out. But to be honest, it was all very manageable and very fun at the same time. Like even if it was a stressful time, it was kind of a fun stress. It was like wow, how cool is it that I get to be participating in this, and how cool is it that I can be stressed out about something so important. So that's probably the most challenging part, is just time management.
Yeah, and that's something maybe we could improve on for the next JASC. But we talked about what you did and what you experienced, some of the unique experience you had while you were at JASC, during JASC and the main conference. Now I want to move on to after the conference, and how has JASC affected your life after you participated in JASC 73, whether it be for skills or connections or friendships, whatever it may be. Also, what kind of changed your life after participating in JASC?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that JASC really improved on my communication skills and my perspective and understanding of other people. And I think that's a big takeaway that a lot of people got from JASC is just communication. And I think I'm a computer science major, so a lot of what I do is just coding. So being able to meet in more of a professional setting and a much more of a social setting was very good practice for me. I don't intend to code my entire life, so being able to interact with people, especially from another country, a whole different culture, being able to interface and understand and learn. There's a lot of lectures and speakers we had that taught us a lot about Japanese culture, like the Ura Senke, sorry for my pronunciation, like the tea ceremony, learning about No theater and things like that. It broadened my horizons immensely. Also, as far as friends go, I made a lot of friends that I still talk to today, both in the US and in Japan, you included. And just recently, there was a very mini JASC reunion on the East Coast, just a handful of people from the American side, and actually one Japanese delegate we got to meet up in DC. So it's really nice that I'm still in contact with people. Like honestly, you make like lifelong friendships, even if it's just a 3-week conference. And professionally speaking, JASC actually afforded me connections that I was able to land an internship in Tokyo. Obviously with COVID and things, it might be difficult to see if that's actually happening, but nonetheless, it did further my career. And in a less tumultuous time, I imagine that it will help even more in the future. So yeah, very, very beneficial experience.
Thank you very much. I do want to touch a little bit about the connections in terms of professional connections that you made and the internship you landed. Obviously, I know you can't really talk about that really specifically, but if you could tell me how you actually got the connection in the first place and how jazz really helped you get through that kind of application process. If there's anything to add towards that more specifically, please, if you have anything to add to that.
So I think around the second week, a company called KPMG Ignition Tokyo, they're the technical development branch of KPMG Japan, or just KPMG as a whole. And so they came and gave a technical talk during one of our days. So it's one of the lectures we had, our guest speakers was KPMG, and turns out that they were recruiting. And having done JASC, having that on my resume, and having been able to interact with the people during that meeting, I think gave me a good head start compared to other applicants, and also 2 other JASC delegates that I participated with applied and got in as well. So I think JASC, just even the reputation of JASC, gave me an immense foot forward. Plus, being able to get a head start talking to them was very helpful.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, do you have any advice for those who are about to become JASC 74 delegates, people who are applying, who want to get into JASC?
Yeah, I would say is don't be afraid to stand out and to be unique, even if that sounds cliche. I know it feels like a very strict and academic process to apply. Like you need to have a very spiffy resume and all very put together. But I'd say don't be afraid to include things that are a little out of the ordinary, something that you wouldn't include on your resume for applying to a job, but something that makes sort of hints about your personality and things like that. Other things you do if you volunteer, if you participate in sports or clubs or anything cool like that. It would help, right? Because I think we get the impression that JASC is kind of like JASC applications are scarier than they really are. We're all college students. I was interviewed by college students. You're going to be interviewed by college students. So take that in mind. These are people, these are your peers, and if you can stand out in a way, I think they'll really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and it was a really big honor to interview you, and it was also
thank you.
Really big
the honor's all mine.
Hosting this interview. Thank you very much, Niko, and so this was interview part 1, and interview part 2 will come very soon. So please stay tuned.